Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
To win on the corner of 16th Street and Georgetown means just a little bit more. Don't believe me? Well, believe the likes of Al Unser Jr. Winning at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is winning more than a championship. It is entering yourself into the immortality books. And so, as we head into the 5th round of the INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series, who enters themselves into immortality here today. Delighted to have your company here on the INDYCAR YouTube channel, live on the iRacing Esports Network. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined as ever by the ever wonderful Kenneth Bueno. And Kenneth, not only are we here at the site of the Indy 500, we're also getting ready to celebrate your birthday. What better way to get underway than some great racing here tonight?
It's the best type of celebration, right? To celebrate my 23rd year around the earth with some fantastic IndyCar racing at this cathedral of speed. This may be the most important race on the schedule, even if you don't think about the championship context at first glance, because it's Indy. Everyone wants to win here. This track can determine winning or losing in various different ways, various drastic ways that we've seen over several years, both in real life and in the sim. The halfway mark of the season is tonight at Indy. It'll be a really interesting one, probably the most pivotal of the year.
And so let's turn back the clock 7 days ago when we made our way to the Barber Motorsports Park. And what an interesting track this is, with its mixture of elevation, slow, medium, and high-speed corners. To turn one, Jordan Caruso on pole position would lead the field on the rise and fall through those opening couple of corners. And with the field stacked up behind, we saw the split on strategies, Kenneth. The majority of the drivers up front starting on the alternate softer compound of tire. Drivers at the back putting themselves onto the more durable primaries to start the race off.
Yeah, but by midway through this race, Arjuna, we had some scares. Guys like Xavi Hiros getting into issues early, entering turn 7. But this was the widest spread that we have ever seen on the strategy front. Here's Luke McEwen going inside on Jordan Caruso, who's had his strongest race of the season by far, but a ton of different strategies. Those guys on the alternates late, they had to wait a long time just to make their desired pit stop at the end of the race. But we saw, Arjuna, some fantastic racing, plenty of mistakes, plenty of drama, but everything came to a real big firework when all the guys on the alternate strategy started converging together as Redline makes the C around a Coanda machine, and everything goes haywire with everything else.
And it was interesting, Coanda seemingly with a strong qualifying car, but struggled a bit more with the race pace. And Michele Costantini, I mean, another race where he's picked up damage to his Dallara R18. Not as much damage, though. as Jacob Oster found himself smashing into the wall through that roller coaster section. That elevation really catching him loose. Ricardo Rico fell victim to Jaden Munoz on the climb, but ultimately Luke McEwen, after he grabbed the lead, it was domination from him in the Apex Racing team machine. And so now as we look at the points, he's leapfrogged himself up into second, but ultimately it's consistency, Kenneth, that's seen Cooper Webster in that team red line number 37 establish himself as the points leader.
In the last 3 races, Cooper Webster hasn't finished a race outside of the top 5. So as good as Luke McEwen and guys like Phil Krause have been over the last several weeks, you cannot beat that level of consistency through the field. But the good thing is that a guy like Luke McEwen is stepping up by halfway, so it will be a big imprint on the championship. Let's head to Speedway, Indiana. This is the host of our 5th round here in this 2024 season. This track doesn't really need an introduction if you're a racing fan in any type of way. This track clocks in at 2.5 miles, 4.023 kilometers, has history dating back to 1909 with 9.2 degrees of banking in each of the corners. It's a rectangle oval, very unique to what we've seen to other ovals on this schedule and across the entirety of the oval side on iRacing. Brandon Trano won the top split race in the qualifying series last time we were here on the route to this one, so it will be a lot of fun to see who can take that checkered flag. For more information on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we had the chance to talk with IMS President Doug Bowles on what the biggest challenges are for those facing this track tonight.
I think one of the interesting things about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is, it's a great big racetrack. It's super fast, long straightaways, and it's banked, but it's relatively flat if you compare it to like a Daytona or Texas Motor Speedway. So if you're somebody that's really good on road courses, this track tends to be a nice track for you to transition into oval racing because those 90-degree corners are a little bit like a road course corner, but it has that element of banking. I think the biggest thing is the precision that's really needed to get through those corners and to make sure you're exiting and you're not going to push on exit, or you're not pinching it too much where you're loose and crashing on exit. That's really where I think folks have to be careful. And those setups here at the Speedway, once you get those setups right, you're going to be able to run flat through those corners. The fastest guys will anyway. And it's all about precision. It's about the exact entry point every time, the exact apex every time. You just miss by a few feet, and that's really going to be a challenge. So precision is really important. And the other piece of it is it's narrow enough. Make sure you've got the pass done before you get to the corner, because too wide at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway often doesn't work, and that's something you got to be a little careful of. And just to use a little bit of caution. Big, long racetrack, an awful lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing. I love these Thursday night series. They've been a lot of fun for us to be part of, and hopefully this is just the beginning of continuing to do events like this.
With Doug throughout the rest of the evening as well. Thanks for his time slightly earlier across of the week. Ready to rumble though, here from the Brickyard. Let's go trackside and take a look at the starting grid for round 5 in the INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series, because a 5th race with a 5th different pole sitter. It is the king of Indianapolis, Rob Mileshka, the 2024 iRacing Indy 500 winner, that will lead us to the green with his teammate alongside, and about 100th of a second splitting the two of them. And then Apex showing up strong. The king of the bricks, Brandon Trano, is alongside of Peter Berryman and Luke McEwen as they try and charge their way to the front. Jeff Drake, his best qualifying effort of the season, sees him line up on the outside of row number 3. Xavi Ross starts alongside of Josh Chin, with Jacob Oster, the best of the Team i5G drivers. He's alongside of Sota Muto. What can he do in the Williams Esports number 68 from the edge of the top 10, with Phil Krause trying to charge his way back from the inside of row number 6. Williams Esports and Jaden Munoz on the outside of row 6 as well to round out the front 12, with Elliot Bayron and Dan Amor back up inside of the qualifying order on row 7. Jordan Caruso and Florian Lebigra, the red line drivers, back on row number 8. It'll be Michael Romanidis and Gustavo Ariel sharing row 9, and just inside of the edge of the top 20, where Diogo Pinto and Eduardo Leo, some work to do with some strong drivers, at least on some road courses. David Toth, Michael Gianni share row number 11, with Sam Koita and Jussi Katia just behind them. And then final couple of rows to run our way through. Just 2 more times on the board for Ricardo Rico and Cooper Webster. Michele Costantini, 2-time pole sitter of the iRacing Indy 500. He's got to try and charge his way from the very back after crashing on his qualifying attempt. With Tamas Shimon, Luis Nunez, and then Adam Crane through the rest of the field. Brendan Lichtenberg lines up at the back, trying to go last to first. He finished 3rd in this year's 2024 iRacing Indy 500. And so, Kenneth, with a look through the rundown complete, talk us through what we're going to see in terms of the weather and the ButtKicker race analysis for the drivers here today.
Well, Arjuna, it will not be the equal distance to what we ran back in June at a full 500 miles, but we go about 165, still enough to spice up the strategy and give ourselves some good racing. Since we're back on an oval this time tonight, we are back with yellow flags, so that can be a determining factor into who can win or lose this race. We should see the fuel window go about 30 to 34 laps long, meaning drivers, for the most part, if there are no cautions, can pit at the exact halfway point and make it till the end. Good thing for the drivers too, no tire set limits. They can pit however many times they want. And in Indianapolis, it is cooking, but Arjuna, very much a cool temperature compared to what we saw in June of this year.
And cooling down, I think that's going to be the important thing. And so we're expecting some crazy racing. It's time for you, the fans, to give us your prediction in chat. Who do you think's going to win here from the Brickyard? We've got 66 laps. If we go green, we could be in for a rather sedate first half of the race as drivers focus on the fuel mileage, but then it will be pedal to the metal and go, 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 go all the way to the end. Green flag in hand of Barney, but fielding control of Rob Malechka. The king of Indianapolis runs his way towards the yard of bricks, and we're ready to rumble in the INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series. So no change inside the front 8 as we now shoot our way off towards turn number 3. But the early stages, one thing you know for sure, swap drafting going to be at play as Brophy and Malechka switch around at the front.
Yeah, those front and back straightaways, they're going to be pivotal in making moves across this race, mostly because as the run progresses, it's going to get a lot tougher as the tires wear down and as the dirty air kicks in for any track position to be gained at any stretch of this race. But one thing we often see, the leaders going back and forth. A lot of this, Arjuna, is to save fuel, but early on, you probably want to make as much progress as possible. Back beneath the top 10, plenty of movers through the field already trying to get themselves established early on. They want to make sure they're in the best place possible for when that strategy starts to kick in a little more.
And I wonder if some of these drivers are already using the fuel maps, which can slightly slow your car down, but give you a bit more fuel mileage. And Josh Chin quite slow on the entry into turn 3 as Elliot Veyron, Jaden Munoz, Dan Amor stacked up behind him, and the margin up to Phil Kraus, 0.4 of a second. We're talking 8 car lengths or so as finally the Frenchman looks to the inside. He stalls out now with no draft in front of him to run him in towards turn number 1. So battle on the outside as Malechka leads once more up front. I think we're in for a very interesting race, Kenneth, where if we get any cautions, the complexion totally changes.
That's what happened at the Indy 500 in that open setup race that we had in June. And one caution late in the going altered the way everything went down, from the pit stops to who ended up where, and how important that is when you've got to restart inside 10 laps to go or even less than that. We know there are no green-white checkers, but for the most part, if you get a late race restart, something will change. Someone will miss out and someone will be able to grab the prize at the end. There's someone hitting pit road. Josh Chin is pitting early on lap 4. This could be an unscheduled pit stop, but for Chin, no apparent damage on his IR-18. A peculiar call just 4 laps into the going.
Remember, we missed Josh Chin last week, had no power after the hurricane that impacted Florida, but great to see him back. Not quite sure what's gone on. We'll see if we can get a word from the private label team hype number 93. So back off to the north end of the racetrack, and one thing to keep in mind is we talked about the track temperature. We haven't talked about the wind just yet, and Kenneth, we're talking about a wind that's about 10 plus miles an hour, anywhere from 10 to 15, and that's going to be a tailwind up towards I think it's turn 3, and a headwind into turn number 1. Why is that important? Well, it means you've got more speed at one end of the track and less speed at the other. How you attack the corner, how you use your in-car tools, all very important as Chin blends back into traffic.
That will go hand in hand, Arjuna, with the weight jacker feature that these IR-18s have, to where you can alter the balance of your car from the rear to the front and vice versa over the course of the run. And it really does matter. I mean, often how many times do we talk about the wind in turn 2 affecting drivers in real life, getting them out of shape and forcing them into the outside wall? plenty of situations we can find with the wind as strong as it is here in tonight's race. But thankfully, these are the first 10 or so laps of the race. Everyone is just establishing where they stand with their race cars and their setups and their track position, so they aren't really pushing it too much. But as the race progresses, and depending on whether that wind goes higher in miles per hour or lower, it will really affect how the guys push at the end when they really need it the most. Good news for Brophy and Malechka, who were the top 2 finishers in the Indy 500 earlier this year. They're doing exactly what Michele Costantini and his teammate did in that same race early on, just going back and forth, saving as much fuel as possible while keeping the traffic behind them.
And one thing I guess that we're keeping an eye on as well is who's not pushing too much. Look at now a switch between McEwen and Berryman for 4th position, but Brandon Traino's been sat back there in 3rd position and not trying to move his way forward. We may expect him to try and save that fuel, push hard at the end. His teammate, though, his Alliance, at least car, Jacob Oster, Team i5G, of course, partnered with the Apex Racing team. Look at him trying to charge there in that number 16. And don't forget, you want to learn more about this series, the schedule, all these drivers and their positions in the championship, head on to iRacing.com/IndyCar-esports today. Your chance to compete in this series for 2024 is gone, but if you want to be like Jacob Oster, roll it around the outside of turn 4 and make a pass on Jeff Drake, you have to keep an eye on qualifying for 2025. And well, your journey could start today. Head on to iRacing.com, where new memberships are 40% off. So you're Josh Chin now. What do? Your teammate, at least in some ways, Jeff Drake is alongside. You're a lap down. Are you going to try and make the pass here, Kenneth?
I'm not sure. This seems to be rather risky, just because if you get past your teammate here in Drake, what else is there to gain? You can probably go up the inside of all the other guys, but it really will be a tough decision to make when this run progresses. Seems like he's just made quick work of his teammate there in Drake, so maybe Drake will just let him by and not give him any sort of resistance. But talking about Jacob Oster, I mean, he's trying to recover from a 29th place finish where he crashed out of that Barber race. We saw it in the last race highlights, and already one of the prominent movers early on, almost 3 wide to the outside of turn 1. Oster is making his name known very quickly in these opening 9.
And I tell you what, he could very well have been in contention in 2022 in the iRacing Indy 500. His first year after joining Team i5G, finishing 2nd in that year's race. His teammate, though, Brendan Lichtenberg, finished 3rd in this year's, the 2024 iRacing Indy 500, and after starting at the very back of the field, 31st, already up to 25th, and so slicing and dicing his way on forward. The judo black belt's throwing his weight around right now. I think you're going to have to keep an eye on him as we head into those closing stages, because he's always a threat. 10 times has Brendan Lichtenberg being featured in the iRacing Indy 500 broadcast split. 10 years. Kenneth, I haven't even been on iRacing for 10 years at this point.
Me neither. I've only been around for, give or take, 5. Caution, though, crash on the back straightaway, and it's Jordan Caruso, who was one of the strongest drivers at Barber last Thursday, is all of a sudden out of this one, stalled in the grass on the backstretch. Jordan Caruso, the heart of the incident, first caution of the race from Indianapolis.
And we'll see what happened on the replay machine. But now, slow things down, and suddenly, I'm expecting a flurry of drivers taking to pit lane. What does this mean in terms of that strategy? Remember, fuel window can take you as far as 34 laps. Let's take a look at what happened, though. So it's going to be out of turn 2, where so Caruso gets passed initially by a red line machine, and now Drago tries to slice its way to the inside. Caruso tries to cover off, maybe a little bit too late, and Brendan Lichtenberg, 2 wheels in the grass, just avoids the stricken Caruso.
And that was a game of predictability there, and for Caruso, he was just trying to go back to the inside. Rico didn't really understand that Caruso was going to make that move. He thought Caruso was just going to tag right in line to give the Drago Racing entry a chance at the inside, but you know what it is with Indianapolis, blink of an eye and your race changes, and for the course of Caruso's race, his is probably over. Did get a tap as well from a red line car up the road. Sam Kiter might have picked up some damage there. Not fully sure what the diagnosis is on his IR-18, but for Caruso, early troubles, and he is out of this one, just 11 laps in the going.
And it's so crazy that you mentioned how quickly things can change, because I remember the first time I ever came to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 2022, was here for Carb Day, just before race day. It's the final day that drivers get to go out on track. And I remember I was with the Team I5G drivers. We had wandered down to the inside of turns 1 and 2, just as the day was going to come to an end. And Kenneth, we were watching a bunch of drivers shooting out of turn 2, practicing their pit exits, basically, right? And coming in and to pit lane, coming out, and just cycling around. And then we're looking at turn 2, and we hear a crunch against the wall and a screech. And we suddenly hear Colton Herder upside down, and then he was in a backup car. It was quite crazy. But I tell you what, we're under caution. Let's slow things down if we can and bring back in Doug Bowles once again, who we caught up with earlier today. And Doug, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been part of iRacing's DNA going back to Dave Kamer's first game, the Indianapolis 500, the simulation. How important is it for IMS to have the heritage and to be involved with video games and be in this sim racing space?
I think it's super important because a lot of our fans in our sport come to understand our sport through the platform, the simulation platforms. Those are the ways they get started. They may not have they may have heard of the Indianapolis 500, or may have heard of INDYCAR, or Formula One, or NASCAR, but have never watched it or participated. And when they get an opportunity to really feel what it's like from the driver's seat, I think that's the front door to creating fans. So I think it's super important that facilities like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, series like the NTT IndyCar Series or NASCAR, Formula One, stay engaged with it, because it is our hardest core fan who really enjoys it and then can actually take what they enjoy and seeing it in real life as well. So I think it's super important to have the facilities and the series involved in platforms like iRacing.
And what's it been like for you to be able to share some of the racing as well with your son Carter directly on iRacing? Talk us through some of the memories that you've been able to build here on the iRacing platform.
Yeah, I think it's a neat opportunity for friends and then family members to do something together around a passion we have. We both are passionate about our sport. And then when Carter really started iRacing, I don't know, it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago now, and together to be able to race together and learn together and have him surpass me for sure in terms of the ability to compete in iRacing, it's been a lot of fun. One of the things here in my office, you saw it, it's hard to show people, but on the other side of this screen is my sim rig that I have here at the racetrack. And I love an opportunity, especially on a weekend when I'm here, I'll come in and get behind the sim rig. I have my driving shoes here so that I can get real professional with it. And it's been a lot of fun to have that in the office. But it's appropriate, I think, the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway should have a rig here so that he can log on to iRacing. But yeah, Carter and I have been doing that, like I said, it's maybe even more than 7 years now. And I no longer compete against him because he'll outrun me. But even our sim rig that we have at home, when he's home from school, oftentimes I'll run down the basement and watch him run just because it's fun to do that. And what's even more fun is that participant in iRacing, the number of race car drivers and mechanics and people in the sport that compete, you never know who you're going to compete against online. And that's really what makes it so much fun, is when you see professional drivers using this as a training tool and competing against folks like us who aren't going to compete against them on the racetrack.
Thanks, Doug, once again for your time. We'll catch up with you slightly later on. And he's right, Adam Blocker, for example, race engineer with Hunkos Hollinger Racing. He's in the crew chief position today for private label Team Hype. What can he do with his drivers up front with the green flag flying once more? Lap 14 of 66 as we get back underway from the Brickyard. And Kenneth, we did see the top 18 drivers stay out, everyone else behind them rumbling down to pit lane.
And among those that got some fuel and some tires on their way to pit road were 3 red line cars, Eduardo Leos, Sam Kreutzer, and points leader Cooper Webster. 2 of them Coanda machines, Michele Costantini, who did not set a qualifying time prior to this race, and Michael Janney back in 25th. So talking about how cautions can change the entire complexion of the race in the strategy side of things, well, that may be a big proponent as we get this first caution underway and as we get this second green flag stint underway as well. Malechka back to the inside of Jason Brophy. Quick challenge for the race lead decided, and this is what they're going to do all race long as they can do it to save fuel. But it will be interesting, Arjuna, to see where everybody 19th on back will settle and how much of a discrepancy it is between those two groups.
Let's check back in with Redline, because did see relatively struggling in qualifying compared to the competition, and I think that's to be expected in many ways. Going fast at the Speedway I mean, in the real world, they have speedway cars that are shaved down aerodynamically, that really make the most of the speed and the ways you build your speed here. Redline, with that lack of experience, maybe coming in at a bit of a disadvantage, as opposed even to a team like Drago, who have Jose Soria on their roster, not racing today, of course. Still no word on if we're going to see him back after his travels through Asia, but they have some experience in setting this car up. And so the best of their drivers right now in 15th, but behind David Toff, Gustavo Ariel, Eduardo Leo, and Sam Coiter, all of the Redline drivers sitting outside of the top 14.
You've got some of those guys from Redline that haven't finished a race in this series outside of the top 10. So talk about consistency. Redline has been at the top of that list. But, you know, talking with the Redline drivers on interviews over the last several weeks, when you ask them about the ovals, they kind of give a little bit of a smirk. They kind of don't have a lot of confidence going into those races. So a lot of it is just taking the notes of what everyone is doing right when you visit the ovals, and then just maximizing what you can. Because as a team, you probably can't switch from a full road course specialist team to a full oval specialist team in about a week. You can try your best, but it may not transfer overnight and that quickly. So what you can do as a primarily road course style of team is just finish well, stay on the track, don't do anything outlandish, and do not get involved in incidents, which is hard to get out of in Indianapolis where things are so fast. But as long as you can keep the oval races calm and uneventful, you can make the use of the road course races and stand out in the championship.
And I'm just looking through various drivers and how they've set themselves up. Redline have got all their drivers in one voice channel, with Josh Thompson and Andre Kunchman helping them engineering and spotting. So they're going to be communicating directly together, being able to give themselves, you know, a bit of direction here and there, as opposed to trying to think of another team that's maybe doing it slightly differently here. But no, for the most part, Williams, they're the counter example. Jaden Munoz and Sotomuto, they've got spotters helping them. Jaden's got Jaco Phillips, Sotomuto's got Ahmed Takoya, and they're in separate voice channels. So they're not working together directly in this race. Always interesting to figure out those unique things about how drivers are trying to work together. Let's focus in a little bit more, though. I think drivers starting to struggle. Peter Behrman, look at the gap in front of him now that Josh Chin, remember a lap down, has got in front. Phil Kraus is going to try and look to the inside of Javi Ross as we run our way to the north end of the track.
And for these two drivers here, Berryman started in 4th. He's already dropped 2 spots since the beginning of this race. Philip Kraus, on the other hand, he's picked up 3 after starting in 11th. That's your Iowa winner right there, Philip Kraus, who had so much speed along with Malechka in the tail end of that race in Newton, Iowa. They're starting to make their own moves, but a little concerned about what Apex is doing here. They had 3 of those cars start this race inside the top 10. If Berryman starts to fall off, it starts to dwindle the possibilities that you can do as a team strategy-wise, especially given the context that these guys still have to pit. We're approaching halfway in this race, and as long as we stay green, these guys in this main pack have to come down at least once for a splash of fuel, and obviously those Firestone Firehawks. So keep an eye on Berryman. If he continues this downward trend, it may just hamper what Luke McEwen and the likes of Brandon Trano can do later in this race.
That's an important thing to keep an eye on. I'm, by the way, after this race, taking a pit stop on my Xbox, because for today and tonight only, Exocross is free to play for all Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S owners. This offer runs out tonight, so if you want to take a spin on iRacing's out-of-this-world console racing game, check out Exocross today for free. You can find that deal on the Microsoft Store. For more information on other deals and platforms, head to exocrossgame.com. Always nice to be able to just jump onto the controller and have a little bit of fun instead of jumping behind the wheel of a sim rig. Jacob Oster's got a new sim rig for this series as well. Has got a dedicated rig, it would seem, as well, with a specific camera placement. Love the RaceBot US 500 bucket hat that he's thrown onto that one as well, as he heads off to turn 1 with, remember, the lapped car of Joshua Chin trying to find his way on through behind.
You know, hey, I was going to say that, you know, Jacob Oster's got a bit of drip there with that bucket hat. I like it from Oster, and he desperately needs to come back after what we saw happen at Barber, where he went straight into the barriers off of, it was about turn 10 or turn 11, where you go up the hill, and that elevation kicks up the rear tires and gets you all out of whack. Luckily for Oster, it's been a very solid race, and just trying to maximize what he can do on these ovals. Keeping an eye with Redline, the first big move we've seen between those guys who pitted recently and those who haven't was between Gustavo Ariel and Eduardo Leo. But Arjuna, I'd have to wonder if these red line guys in the back and everybody else who pitted under that last caution flag, if they're just waiting it out. They know inevitably those guys up front are going to have to pit, but when is the calling card and how will that change? Are you just going to limit your aggressiveness just because those up front aren't pitting? It's a rather interesting proposition you could put for those guys who are just hanging in the pack at the moment.
Yeah, and we're not far away from that pit window as well, right? Yes, we've had the caution, which might see the margin extend for drivers up to maybe 35 or so realistically, but everyone in this race needs a pit stop. Jacob Oster, take a bow. Now, he's in a voice chat with Luke McEwen, so I'm sure they're still talking to each other and trying to prevent Josh Chin from working forward, because strength in numbers clearly is important, right? And so if Josh Chin, a lap down, can sit third in line, and Kenneth slightly separate Rob Malechka, Jason Brophy from the rest of the chasing pack behind, that could be very important. And here he comes, back down to the inside in towards turn number 3.
Well, he's not going to lay back and let this situation develop in front of him. He wants to take an upper hand, and he'll go right in front of Luke McEwen without any hesitation. A bit of a wince there, got real close there in that short chute between turns 3 and 4. That's big for that team hype team as they get this strategy underway. And wonderful job to use Josh Chin in the situation that he's in. A lot of times when a driver and a team goes a lap down, you often won't see them play a role, but with the teams that are in this series, Arjuna, a lot of them say, hey, you may be a lap down, maybe you're not running for the win, that doesn't mean you're out of it. You can still help us and help the team succeed as we approach halfway. Wonderful stuff from Chin, but I'm sure that Apex Racing with McEwen and Berryman a little frustrated to see this happen at the moment.
And it goes to something that Kenneth and I were talking about before we went live. Is this a situation for some drivers where the race is bigger than a championship? There are some drivers, as we reach the halfway mark of this 10 race season, I should say, that are already effectively mathematically out of it. Take Brandon Traynor, for example. He's already missed 2 races this season, right? And so if he finds himself in a position to take this race 3 wide on the final lap, a slightly risky 3 wide move, but it gives him the win at a track where we know he can be so special. The only multi-time winner of the iRacing Indy 500, and he did it on 3-4 consecutive occasions as well. Kenneth, you've got to assume he's going to go for it. Whereas, if you're someone like Luke McEwen, you're probably thinking, right, I've got to think championship here. I've got to consolidate my spot up front as 3 wide behind sees a drag race off to the yard of bricks.
And that was Sam Kiter, Michele Costantini, and Cooper Webster. I'm sure Costantini doesn't want to see an IR-18 approximately 10 feet away from him. He's had so many problems racing with other cars over the last several weeks. It has taken him out of events where he could be so strong. But to your point earlier about a guy like Brandon Traynor, at this point in the championship, halfway through, that's where you start to distinguish those that are points racing, in a sense, and those who have absolutely nothing to lose. For guys like Costantini on your screen and Brandon Traynor, who runs in 3rd, this altering point of the championship is their moment where their mindset switches from let's get as many points as possible to let's go all out. Maybe we don't have another opportunity to get ourselves back in the fight for not the championship only, but some prize money. These guys are still racing for some dollar bills, y'all, at the end of the 2024 season. So these are guys that have absolutely nothing to lose at this juncture of the season. Why not take a risk? Why not try something for the win?
Word from some down on pit lane is it's quite difficult to pass, and so we're watching some behind. Costantini, as ever, being blinded by the power of all the suns in the universe being combined together. He's got a smile on his face at least. Sam Koititz directly in front of him. Just seeing as he now jump inside of that aero screen as well. Really ensconces the driver. Not really closing, maybe saving a bit of fuel, yes, but the amount of dirty air they're just having to deal with right now, it compounds from a number of cars you've got up in queue in front of you. Very, very difficult. And so, about to hit lap 30, about to see the first group of drivers think about their trips down to pit lane. You've now got to also think about execution on pit lane, because Kenneth, it's something that we see in the real world as well. You take off all the downforce on these cars and it becomes difficult to slow them down. And so that pit road speed limit, 60 miles an hour, you're coming in at 220 odd miles an hour into pit road, it's very easy to make a mistake as we see some drivers behind shoot them way off of the wall. I think there was one driver that's lost a part of their front wing.
Yeah, it looks like Nexus Esports' Luis Nunez that got into the outside wall, washed up out of turn 4, and right behind him was Adam Crane, who had to make an effort to get out of the way, but escaped with some big-time nose damage. And the other car that got away from it was Tamas Shimon, one of the more so independent drivers in this series. But you're right, talking about pit road, it's coming up real soon for these guys, and when you approach that entry off of turn 4, it's not the typical pit lane route where it's on the bottom of the racetrack and you're going slow and you know you're going to make pit road speed limit. You got to come off of turn 4, guns blazing, and then try to woe it down to 60 miles an hour. On the bottom of your screen, what happens there to Nunez, bounces off the wall, and there is nothing, Arjuna, that Adam Crane can do to get out of the way in enough time.
Adam Crane and Luis Nunez are actually working together, and so I can only assume what the conversation was like over the radio. Yeah, Crane's got no downforce at this point, and so he's brought his car down to pit lane. Now, this is important. Luke McEwen has lost time to Jacob Oster, and I wonder if we're going to start to see fifth on back start to squabble a bit more, because Josh Chin, remember, 1 lap down, had to come into pit lane after the opening couple of laps. Hasn't been able to fight his way onto the lead lap just yet. However, he wants to try and get up towards the front, be with his teammates and try and help them out. Unable to do so just yet. Look at him go up high though, put some clean air onto the nose, try and build his speed onto the back straight.
Well, this will be big, Arjuna, especially as we're those several laps away from most of this field at the front. Coming down pit road, you're going to be starting to looking for a sign like a meteorite, right, for Luke McEwen or Peter Berryman. As you start to fall away from 4th on forward, that's where you start to believe, if an alternate strategy works out, we could gain a ton of distance on those in the front. And how often did we see that in the iRacing Indy 500 earlier this year? Countless guys pitting a little earlier or waiting another lap just to create that distance between themselves and the rest of the pack that are ahead or behind them. McEwen will have to make a decision whether he'll join the top 4 and be on their strategy, or if there's a bit more holding up with Joshua Chin in the middle of all this. What will that say for Berryman and all of those guys that are trapped beneath the top 5 and are in that latter half of the top 10? We're at that fuel window. Question is, who will make that decision first?
And I guess we know from this point, a caution, everyone comes in, and from there, it's a mad scramble to the end, expecting them to go at least a couple of laps longer. Remember, we've had 1 caution today, which not bad all things considered, but further behind, we've got a taker. And it's Michael Romanidis in that number 53. Commander Esports' driver heads his way to pit lane and joined by no one else, which is important, Kenneth, because much like at, for example, Daytona, for those NASCAR fans joining us on the iRacing Esports Network, it's always better to pit in pairs. We see the leaders swapping up front. You want to try and swap if you come down pit lane as well.
You know, the difference between being alone and being in a group of guys can equal to about 5 to about 10 miles an hour at its worst. So for a guy like Romanidis, it's a risky call to go all the way by yourself, but problem is he doesn't really have a lot of teammates to follow in his footsteps other than an Elliot Veyron who's sitting in P9 because of Costantini, Michael Janney, them coming in pit road on that first and only yellow of the race. That played a big role in it. So Romanidis, in this attempt, trying to jump those guys at the front. It is an alternate strategy that can work. We're getting cues, though, Arjuna, that those at the front are having to pit this time. Let's see the drama, the fireworks off turn 4.
And I wonder here if Malechka and Brophy somewhat gapping each other a little bit to give themselves a little bit more margin. Now, Jason Brophy's known for being a pit road speed denier. Is he going to have any issues getting down to the speed limit this time by? Takes it a bit too easy, if anything, and that's important. Why? Because that could be half a second here or there that you've now given up on your competition. No one following in the private label team like Duo. Important though, like I mentioned, they've got a friend that'll be swapping on pit exit and building their speed back up.
You know, for Josh Chin, he probably thinking that he played his part right in Apex Racing. Now that they have Trano, McEwen, and Berryman all out on the racetrack, they've got their own strategy to employ, but it's about how much of a difference they have according to those other guys that just came in. Off turn 4, this may be the sign for Trano and company. None of them are pivoting to the left and entering pit road, and that'll be the same for basically everyone back to that 18th place car. in Cooper Webster, who was one of those who pitted on the first yellow. But for those who stayed out as long as they did, surprised they're having enough fuel to stay out here. 30 laps to go.
Maybe again, just bumping it down into one of those alternate fuel maps that they've got. Remember, INDYCAR tools at their disposal, not just the fuel maps, but also anti-roll bars at the front and rear to stiffen or loosen the car up. You've also got that weight jacker on the ovals. Very, very important, as some call it, coil binding, so that you make the car set up in a certain way on the corners and then a different way on the straights. Helps you. Very, very marginal speed gains, but that's what we're talking about at this level. Slight lockup, yes, but I think Brandon Traynor, Jacob Oster, Luke McEwen, they hit the number as cleanly as you'd like. And so, wait, never mind. The nose is missing on Luke McEwen's front end, and so the winner last week, drama on pit entry.
And it was into the pit road wall as the car stepped out under braking. He was facing that wall with nowhere else to go. The car just rammed into the barrier. The nose part of the wing falls off. And for Luke McEwen, this is big because Apex Racing had Peter Berryman stay out on that last lap he's in. This time by, he'll have Jeff Drake and several others along with him. But that will tear apart Apex's powerhouse at the front of the field.
Oh, and it's not just that he's locked the brakes, he's locked it over a bump, so it goes so suddenly, he doesn't have a chance to catch the car effectively and hard into the wall. He only loses, it turns out, around, oh, never mind, I thought he was going to just have to change a front wing. It seems as though his suspension's taken a lick as well, and so, a driver second in championship standings, going to slide down the order after this one, and that's what Indy does. It picks, it chooses. Luke McEwen, last few times he's come here, it's not necessarily always gone in his favor. Phil Krause, he qualified the worst of the private label team hype drivers, and he stays out trying to make something happen, brings with him Elliot Veyron and a couple of other drivers, but it does now mean that those that pitted under the caution, Kenneth, have cycled to the front of the field.
The problem, though, is for those guys that pitted on the first yellow, they have to pit one more time. Given how this race has gone, there could be the idea that if another yellow comes out, it is the absolute savior from pitting and track position. You'll gain both on either end, but with 26 laps to go, and these guys are now 28 lap old tires and 28 laps on their fuel tanks, they cannot make it. It will be a big challenge to see how they're able to recover after this, because Philip Krause rather, who's in 7th, is just falling outside of the top 10, but his distance to those guys in the main pack isn't necessarily that big, especially as these guys come in pit road. It'll be a lot of fun. There is Krause off of turn 2. He'll join with one of the Apex cars that goes right to the inside, which is Peter Berryman. We saw him stay out the extra other lap in comparison to his teammates. Those are the guys for the net race lead, should everyone up front have to pit one more time, which they do.
And we've had a change across of this pit sequence as well, Kenneth. Not quite sure how this has happened, but Jason Brophy's dropped back quite significantly. And Rob Malechka is still, yes, up towards the front, but now behind Brandon Traynor. So 26 to go, and this entire cycle has been flipped all around. And I don't know what this means.
Turn 1 sideways is Florian Labigra, and he is still spinning, trying to catch the IR-18. He does a wonderful save by the Frenchman, but that could have been the pivotal yellow for those who had stayed out. Now with 25 laps to go.
They would have still dropped behind, but it would have maybe helped them in some ways. This definitely going to compromise Labigra in a race that Redline knew it was always about damage limitation. Jacob Oster does not want to let Josh Chin stay in line, but the driver that's one lap down continues to fight and hold on to his track position. And so Traynor leads Malechka 1 and 2, and the laps car then behind Jacob Oster. Intensity is only going to rise from here. And Kenneth, it comes down to the 2 drivers in this field that potentially have already won iRacing Indy 500s. Let's go back in time, take a look at what happened to Labigra in the short chute.
This is a huge pack, and I mean huge, Arjuna, going to turn 1. Those are 3 Redline cars. Cooper Webster, Gustavo Ario in the background. That's Jeff Drake, who gets into Florian Labigra, and look at this save. Inches from the outside wall in the short chute off turn 1. Labigra, who we saw stuff it up at Long Beach and recover late in the race, could have the opportunity to do so here with 24 laps to go, but that could have been disastrous had the yellow been thrown. For that incident, Labigra keeps his race alive at the cost of falling 1 lap down.
seems as though Jason Brophy may have had an issue with his pit crew not putting tires onto his car. Not quite sure how you forget the Firestone Firehawk tires, but it seems to have happened nonetheless, and he's at the very back of the pack now effectively. I think that's his chance of winning at Indy done and dusted once again. He was so close in 2020 to winning the iRacing Indy 500. Drag race to turn 4, he hit the wall, and it was not to be. This, though, is one of the Commander Esports drivers. Brendan Lichtenberg behind, Michele Costantini still yet to come down onto pit lane, onto the 33rd lap of his run as well. So Kenneth, we're only a lap or two away from seeing the 5 drivers up front rumble down to pit lane.
It'll be interesting to see where the likes of Philip Kraus, Robert Malechka, all those other guys, what they have to say, because it's only 5 cars strong. It isn't necessarily a big pack of guys that are able to create a large buffer between themselves and all of those who just pitted recently. But for Costantini, you know, talking to Jordan Caruso after last week's race at Barber, asking him about the ovals, he pointed to the Italian and said, that's our guy on the ovals. That's our strongest driver. And much like the Indy 500 several months ago, Costantini was one of the men to beat early on. Strategy took him out of it just because of how it all fell down. But can Costantini rebound? This would be his first, give it top 10 since the first race of the season at Indianapolis on the road course, if he can do it.
And well, I guess the thing about Indies, you've got plenty of time down the straights to look around, enjoy the scenery, or in the case of Costantini, the bright light being shone into his eyes, but very relaxed right now. These drivers have done thousands of laps at the virtual IMS, both for qualifying and race conditions in the various build-ups to the iRacing Indy 500s, and so let's watch them onto pit lane. Costantini locks up the fronts. Now, what's that reaction? Okay, no penalty. I thought for a second there it was gobsmacked disbelief from Costantini.
Oh, and there's a spinner. That's Coenda's Michael Janney, who got the black flag for speeding. He spins with one of the Drago Racing entries. It might have been Ricardo Rico. They entered behind Costantini and company. They end up in trouble, but you're right. Costantini looked like it was close, as he had every bit of the wheels locked up there on the entry, and here he is with Lichtenberg. Tamas Simon takes the lead. There is the entire field now passing through. Where do they merge in this top 15?
Not expecting it to be that close. However, remember that they were on the edge of the top 20 going into the pit cycle. That's what they're really trying to build on. Costantini's going to blend seemingly around David Toft of 15th. I think that's a net gain overall in terms of strategy. Let's see what they can do with some fresh tires to push to the end as Tamas Simon brings his number 57 down to pit lane, the final of the drivers to pit. And so, back towards the yard of bricks. 19 laps yet to run. We've had 1 caution so far, and 2 iRacing Indy 500 winners up front, with a lapped car splitting them from the rest of the field. And here we go, swap drafting once again. As the speed builds up, the intensity starts to rise as well.
Well, we were seeing that private label team hype duo rather at the start of this race with Robert Malechka. They were switching positions back and forth in the effort to save fuel. But right now, there's no strategy. This is outright racing for the win, the chance to in these final 19. And so that pass was by design without strategy involved. That's a pass to get away from an Apex Racing driver and to have the 3rd car in line be Joshua Chin, who is still a lap down back in 26th. Treno may be in a bit of trouble. Here comes Treno, though. Inside look. Turn 1 for the race lead.
And so we're going to get, potentially, if we get towards the final laps of the race and a late race caution, Josh Chin could be cycled back if that caution is within 10 to go. One thing I can guarantee you, we have had some one-lap shootouts in the iRacing Indy 500s over the years. One-lap shootouts usually result in 2, 3, sometimes 4 wide finishes. This year, Kenneth, we had, what was it, 0.02 of a second that split first from second at the end as Rob Malechka fended off the challenge from Jason Brophy.
Just about 3 1,000ths of a second. They were 3 wide running to the yard of bricks, and Malechka, all he needed was just a strong enough run off the final corner. You were telling me before we went live here tonight that it will matter off of turn 4 more than it will in turn 3. A lot of pivotal moments have happened in the real-life Indianapolis 500 in turn 3 when someone tries to make the dive on the inside for the lead. But here on iRacing, it's always turn 4. Watch that. And for Treno, you saw the big run he got down the front straightaway. and didn't want anything to do with going on the inside of Malechka just yet. Could be a proper practice there for the Apex Racing machine. Still searching for win number 1 and trying to defend his qualifying series win here from a couple of months ago.
And that's a contrast with the this year's real Indianapolis 500 in full metal racing, right, where the move was done in turn 3 between Joseph Newgarden and Pato O'Ward, right? That confidence, the ability to go around the outside. I mean, that was remarkable. I just remember the roar of the crowd. I was sat turn 1 and 2, but you could hear it. You knew what was happening just by the emotion of 300-odd thousand people standing up and applauding for what was a bit of a blockbuster finish. Turn 4, you can get a small moment here on iRacing, small bobble on one of the bumps, and find yourself losing all sorts of momentum in what is a drag race to the yard of bricks at 220 miles an hour. It's been relatively clean, though. Rather clean, to a point where I am, Kenneth, just waiting for an inevitable caution. And to those that believe in the commentator's curse, no, this is not me putting the curse down.
Well, Arjuna, we're getting close to Halloween time, so I don't know if you want to play with the curse a little bit. But, you know, we did have a really long green flag run in the Indy 500 several months ago on the sim, and we had a pivotal caution late in the race. You know, at Iowa, we had a caution that came out in the final laps, and it gave Philip Kraus the win under yellow. You know, at some point it will happen. Peter Berryman is going to get spun off turn 4 by Philip Kraus. He picks up damage and goes right into the outside wall, back up into the field. The curse is well and alive. Second caution out with 14 laps to go.
And I don't know if this means Josh Chin gets cycled out of that front group. We may restart with 11 to go, but we now get a shootout to the very end. Are we going to see drivers come down for tires as well? Because got to keep in mind, Malechka's been out on track for 17 laps now. That's not insignificant. One caution well and truly can change everything. And the thing about the Speedway, across more than a century of racing, it will pick its winner. All you can do is put yourself in the right place at the right time. And that's why right now, 2 of the iRacing Indy 500 winners that sit at the front of the field have done just that, as Peter Berryman limps the Apex Racing number 50 back down towards pit lane. I think that's going to be the last that we see of him. 31 took to the green. Jordan Caruso, Luis Nunez, UC Katia, Luke McEwen, Michael Johnny, and now Peter Berryman. DNFs in this race. Attrition quite high so far today.
Yeah, that's Indianapolis for you. It moves all at once and then not at all. For Berryman, he's going to be taken out of both of our oval races thus far. He finished back in 25th at Iowa with some problems there, some problems here at Indy, and now we've got a big time caution that will change this race probably for the rest of it. Here's how it goes. We saw Philip Kraus be a little bobbly off of some of the corners in the last several laps, made the effort on the inside of Berryman. Everything seemed to be fine, but it was the contact with that little curving on the inside and that transition of the banking that got Kraus out of shape, hopped into Berryman up the racetrack. Berryman tried to save it, banged the inside wall, and then came right back up into traffic. There's a look from the Coanda Esports machine of Elliot Veyron. And just a big-time problem there for Berryman, who was taking out of the Indy 500 several months ago. And watch this, pit road decisions. Brandon Trano, Jacob Oster are in. Everyone else, for the most part, are staying out.
And I was wondering, are we going to see the coordination there between teammates? Because Oster and Brandon Trano, the Apex Racing and Team i5G Alliance, they decide it's worth coming down. Clearly, private label Team Hype going to leave Chin out there to try and back up Malechka. Now, Veyron and Romanidis, Coanda find themselves in a great position to grab a podium finish, but with Michele Costantini down in 10th, it's not their main competitor or main expected charger that is up towards the front. One thing that I noticed watching that replay, Kenneth, Berryman opened the door in through turn 3. Like, he almost invites Phil Kraus to look to the inside, and then once they're wheel-to-wheel through the short chute, all it takes is for a little bit of understeer for Kraus to wash up the track, and boom, bit of contact, Berryman goes around.
You know, sometimes when you're in a more relaxed racing type, you're going to allow drivers to make moves on the inside or outside because you think, hey, this pass will be done rather quickly and we'll be fine once we get out of the corner. But for the most part, as soon as Kraus got to the inside, there was nothing that Berryman could do to ignore it, so they stayed side by side. And again, like I said with the replay that we saw just moments ago, Kraus in the several laps before this, bobbling all over the place.
And well, we caught up with Doug Bowles, president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, on a couple of occasions so far over the course of the day. Let's check in with him one more time, just to ask him a bit more about the build-up to the 2025 Indianapolis 500, because of course time's already starting to tick down. Where can people learn more about this event, and how can they secure their tickets for the greatest spectacle in racing for 2025?
Yeah, so we're 223 days away from the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. It's hard to believe that it's just, at least when we're taping this, we are. We have, our renewal period is complete, so people that bought tickets last year want to renew. It's stronger than it's ever been, except for 2016 when we sold the venue out. I firmly believe that we'll sell all our reserve seats for this year. We'll go back on sale for people that don't have their tickets already, sometimes here towards the end of October. And then from that point on, it's the best ticket pricing is right now. They just go up as we get closer to the race. So hopefully people get a chance to come out here and experience it if they haven't. And for those of people that can't make it in 2025 but are racing or watching this race, hopefully they'll get a chance to make that a bucket list item and get here to the Speedway at some point in time. Even when you see it on iRacing, you're getting around the racetrack in 39-ish seconds or so. It's a 2.5-mile facility. It's massive when you see it in person. First time, that's what I love when people come here the first time. They say, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was so big, because you get around it so quickly in an IndyCar on a sim, or when you're watching it on TV. It just makes it seem a lot smaller, and when you get here and you see how big the place is. Second largest city in the state of Indiana, inside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in terms of attendance on race day for the Indy 500 every year is pretty crazy.
And well, I was there for the first year in 2022. I've been every year since, and I'll be there as long as they'll have me, and they won't kick me out of the grounds. Always great to catch up with Doug. Thanks for giving us a bit of your time earlier in the week. And I've got to say, it's always cool seeing Doug around the grounds of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He's always roaming, always talking, and always chatting with the fans. 10 laps, though, to settle this. Josh Chin has been shuffled out of the initial running order of the pack, and so now Malechka has got Veyron and Romanides stacked up behind him. 25 miles to settle this from the Brickyard. Let's punch it, let's go racing, and go up through the gears once again. Who's going to work together here? Look at those team logos on the left-hand side. 2 private label team hype, 3 Coanders, 3 red lines inside of the top 10, and already side by side in through turn 2.
Veyron wants the power move on the outside of turn 2. He's going to remain even with Malechka down the long back straightaway, but will Romanides play a factor? He'll dive under. 3 wide for the lead in turn 3.
Well, is this where experience is going to come into play? Will Malechka try the switchback? He'll try and slide up the inside. Veyron back to third. Malechka back to first. 9 to go at the yard of bricks. And what does Phil Kraus do in 4th position as he tries to make it a PLTH 1 and 2? With ducking and diving all the way down to the wall. Running off to turn number 1. Kraus on the right-hand side nudges the wall, but he's up to 3rd position, challenging Elliot Veyron.
And Romanides blocked Veyron off of turn 4. You'd figure they would work together, but they're working as individuals here down the back straightaway. The first of the snake trailing we're seeing all night long as Kraus made the mistake, looking for 3rd. He's in that battle with Xavi Ros, the Spaniard, on the outside. That's going to be for that 4th place position, but it's all about how can Coanda respond to the move by Robert Malechka. 8 laps to go this time by, and they've got a big run off turn 4. What do they do with it?
And so, can he win for a 3rd big time here at the Brickyard this year? In the month of June, he won both the iRacing Fixed and Open 500s on back-to-back days, a feat no one will ever get a chance to do again, because next year it will be on consecutive weekends rather than consecutive days. I think we're at that sort of point in this little juncture as well with, let's not forget, worn tires for these drivers as well, Kenneth, that if you're not in a position to make moves right now, if you're not inside of the front 5, your chances are gone unless the caution flies, which it does just there. Florian Lebigra mixed up, but I think Brandon Treno caught up in things as well.
And Treno was one of those guys who pitted on the last yellow flag. Him and Jacob Oser fell down to 18th and 19th. Treno, who had been strong all night long, now taken out in a late race caution with about 8 laps to go. Florian Lebigra in the heart of this. There is a damaged Jeff Drake, that 75 machine, all in red with a ton of damage on the left or right, the right front rather, in the front nose of it. It's all torn up and a big time crash on the back straightaway.
Well, we'll take a look at the replay and begin our dissections of things as Jeff Drake tries to dissect a couple more parts off his car. The iRacing damage model getting a great workout, that's for sure. Now, even though it is the off-season for the NTT IndyCar Series, it should be noted that the drivers, the teams, and the engineers behind the scenes have still been out there and testing. They were here at IMS last week, testing at the Speedway with the brand new hybrid, of course, that they've introduced in 2024. They were at Iowa this week. Rather cool conditions from what we heard. But let's not forget, even though there's no racing on your screens in full medal action, still very much are building up for next year. Let's take a look, though, and Jacob Oster, Brandon Traino, I was wondering why they decided to come down to pit lane. It puts you in a compromised position, and looks like Traino's really struggling already off towards turn number 2.
And he was being forced by a red line driver, washed up the track. You can't keep that much throttle with the limited banking you have here. As soon as they're going side by side, Labigra is looking for free space. He charges in the middle, 3 wide. It appears Jeff Drake fully didn't see the nose of that red line machine come up in the foreground, and all of a sudden, all 3 of them tangled together. Traino just got tagged in it late. He could not see what was going down between Drake and Labigra. Here's the look with, that was Jason Brophy, who had been running up front all race long. Somehow escapes as the seas part in front of him.
That was, again, close for comfort, but I do say cautions breed cautions. It's not often that races at Indianapolis do end behind the safety car, but it could be the occasion that the next flag after we get restarted could end the race. Very, very interestingly poised race right now. And Phil Kraus not really pushing it. And if you're wondering, by the way, I saw some questions, why are we defending so hard with 8 to go? Because A, we're racing at Indianapolis. Everyone wants to win here at the cathedral of speed that is the Brickyard. But there is also the $50,000 prize pool to fight for. And Kenneth, there are some drivers up towards the front who will be thinking about where they'll be at the end of the season when we make our way to Nashville to crown our champion.
And for your top 3 right now, Malechka, Romanidis, and Veyron, all 3 of them sit outside of the top 10 in point standings. And if you're wondering how much of a difference that is in cash prizes, well, it can be up from $500 to about $1,000 of a difference in one race, just if you're able to finish this one strong or get a race win. And even talk about those who are further down the order that can try and punch their way into some cash prizes. Xabi Ros, who has been hanging around in that background, the Spaniard runs 5th. He goes into this race 20th in point standings. He's not in the range of at least $500. So for a lot of these guys, it's that proper shot at getting some cash prizes, even if they don't run for the championship at the season's end.
And one thing just to point out as well, given that we are here at the Brickyard, private label Team Hype and Powerslide for today are running with the Open Medicine Foundation logo on their car and support of part of the iRacing IndyCar community. OMF envisions improved healthcare for patients suffering from multi-system chronic complex diseases, and so tries to facilitate collaboration between patients, clinicians, and researchers. So it'll be quite cool if they are able to grab the win here. Malechka's in a very, very good position to control, but equally vulnerable potentially to those behind. You hear the sound of the engines singing at the top of the rev range. It means we're burning a little bit of fuel, and it means 4 laps to go, Kenneth, on this restart. Oh, I don't think the next flag would end the race if it happens when we get back underway into turn 1, but I think as soon as we hit 3 to go, a caution sees the race ended right there.
And that's what you do not want to see if you're Romanidis and Veyron, which may give you a little more incentive to run harder in those opening laps off the restart. Oftentimes, you'll see guys wait at least 1 or 2 laps to get to full song, and then that's when they start unleashing the moves. That's when they start putting in that play action and start getting those big plays in. But for Romanidis and Veyron, because it may cut really close, they may tell themselves, let's go for it now. If we stay nose ahead and the caution comes out, we've got a chance to win this thing. So here we go. We'll see what happens with 5 laps to go.
Well, to win at Indy is special, and only a couple of drivers in the field still in contention have done that. Eduardo Leo won the first round of the championship when we raced here on the road course. Malechka, defending champion of the iRacing Indy 500. He holds them a little bit longer this time. What's it going to mean down to turn 1? Will we see some stack-ups? Yes! Oh, before they even get to the yard of bricks, they're collected on top of each other. Ricardo Rico, Sotomuto, Tamas Simone, and maybe a couple more mixed up in that one. We will get another restart. The question will be, Will it be a one-lap shootout, 2.5 miles to settle it all?
Well, now this is going to give more incentive to those co-INDYCARs to go for it at the end. It was a big stack up in the back of the field around where Brendan Lichtenberg was. Remember that late start by Malechka to catch those guys behind him off guard? Well, it transferred all the way to about 19th and 20th, even back to the top 15 as they were going for the yard of bricks. It was Ricardo Rico, Tomasz Simon who went into the air. Lots of guys taken out late in this one. That'll definitely mean a lot for the championship with just that big incident.
I'm not sure if we're going to get a restart with 1 to go or not. But let's catch up with the pace car this time by, and we'll start to learn a little bit more. This is also, quite importantly, the second of 5 oval races across of this season. The running order is not shaken up maybe as much as some would have expected with some of the retirements that we've had throughout the course of the race, because you have the likes of Romanidis and even Pinto, Coit at Redline have worked their way forward into the top 10. However, we've still got trips to Gateway, the Worldwide Technology Raceway, and the Milwaukee Mile, and Nashville still yet to come. Kenneth, if Private Label Team Hype and Rob Malechka can continue being at the front, they could very well fight their way back into championship contention.
And it will be even more positive news for them, knowing that after Mid-Ohio, 3 of the next 4 races until the finale are oval races, so they will use that to their advantage. Let's take a second look at what happened at the back of this field to chaos everybody together. It started with that blue and white and dark blue machine of Brendan Lichtenberg, but on your screen is Ricardo Rico, who's about that 3rd or 4th car in line. They'll all stack up in the attempt to get the restart going. Then up and over goes Tomasz Simon. 2 red line cars are involved, including Arjuna, your current points leader, Cooper Webster.
Well, he's still going to finish decently in terms of points, at least relative to where he was already. He's still going to be 16th or so, but not an ideal day. He did say it was kind of damage limitation. Lights are still on the pace car, so it is official. We will finish behind the safety car here at the Brickyard. Bit of a disappointment, yes, in some ways. It now means quite remarkable. 5 races, 5 winners. Kenneth, this is quite crazy. I mean, you could still have, you know, all sorts of swings on our way to the end of this championship, but don't count out some of these drivers that started off slightly slowly.
And for Robert Malechka, that means that he will be victorious at Indianapolis for the 3rd time in a big iRacing event here over the last 6 or so months, maybe 4 months now, give or take. So Malechka continues to sit on the throne here at IMS as long as this ends under caution, as he's able to continue without any types of problems. But what a big race here for Romanidis and Veyron, 2 guys who came into this race having finished outside of the top 10 at Barber and at Iowa, had a bit of a better race, finished both inside the top 15, but are still just trying to set themselves in the right place for the championship. That will be big for them, even if they can't get the checkered flag.
And so it is also, let's not forget, our second oval race that is going to finish behind the safety car after Iowa in those closing stages. Phil Kraus grabbed the win, yes, but paced behind the iRacing sedan. So on to the final lap here. Hope all the drivers have enough fuel, which they should have at this point. But there is still the potential that drivers do not see the checkered flag in the order they are right now. Let's go back, take one more look at this incident from the viewpoint of the spaceman, Jacob Oster, who, remember, pitted in the late stages and put himself in this position. He could have been up front, but no. Instead, he's back here in the quagmire of a chaotic restart, I've got to say. Just watching from that onboard perspective, great avoidance. But you can't, I don't know what some of those drivers are thinking. It was always going to happen that the leader was going to try and hold the start as long as possible, Kenneth. You can't be trying to jump the restart. All you're going to do is cause chaos like they did there.
Well, but that's the nature of being a race car driver, and being competitive, Arjuna, is just trying to get the upper hand and the benefit over everyone else when they least expect it. Maybe they were not expecting Malechka to go as late as he did. They were trying to stay in line, but the checkup was just too big. And as soon as it snowballed, after all of that, it just got worse. What a job by Oster to get out of it. He'll get 14th by just escaping that crash.
Oh, and again, I think all of those that avoided that incident for the most part were those with more experience at this sort of race in the past. So again, maybe not a surprise. We've still got some ways to go, though, on these ovals, some learning to do. No learning up front, though. That's a driver that's been here and done it before. He'll celebrate in victory lane at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The king of Indianapolis this month of June, the winner of the 2024 iRacing Indy 500 in both the open and fixed versions. He crosses the yard of bricks first here in the iRacing INDYCAR ButtKicker Series. It's Rob Malechka, it's private label team hype on top here at Indy.
And that means 5 races, 5 different winners. We have yet to see anybody cross to the checkered flag first more than once. That continues to alter the parity of the championship. And for Robert Malechka, who on our last oval race finished just behind his teammate Philip Kraus, who ended up picking up the victory, Malechka says, it's my turn this time here at Indianapolis. Probably not the most thrilling way to end it, but I'd say the caveat for that, Arjuna, Malechka didn't have to stress out for the end. He could just calmly run under pacing, and there is his teammate Philip Kraus to give him the congratulations. Private label team high, victorious for the second time in 2024.
I think Josh Chin's trying to peek his way through as well. Remember, he went a lap down and did his part, stayed out of trouble. The team will grab their photo opportunity pacing the field on this final lap. And you've got to assume Rob Malechka's got some milk in the fridge already, ready to go for this one. I'm expecting Kenneth to ask him of what variants of milk has Rob Malechka got lined up for today. Let us know in chat what milk you would be drinking if you were celebrating in victory lane. There's only a couple of acceptable answers, and chocolate milk is included in them, if you ask me. Eduardo Leo did commit the cardinal sin, though, of celebrating at Indianapolis, doing burnouts on the yard of bricks. My hope and my expectation is Rob Malechka has been to 22 Indy 500s in his life. He's 26 years old, so count them. He's missed 4 in his entire lifetime. He'll know that he should not burn out on those yard of bricks, and so it's time to see this winning moment presented by ButtKicker as Rob Malechka burns it down in victory lane, Kenneth. Well, the burnouts went well until they didn't, and now he's got to try and reverse that car as well so they can grab their photo. Rob Malechka brings private label team hype into victory lane once again here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the second time in this season. Let's go ahead, take a look at the race results, and then grab a chat with our podium sitters after they decompress slightly after an anticlimactic finish for them. Rob Malechka from a pair of Coanda Esports drivers who will be thrilled. Their strategy worked out exactly the way they wanted, and Michael Romanidis, Elliot Bayer on 2nd and 3rd respectively. Phil Kraus, 4th in his private label team hype, number 99, grabbed some valuable points in that championship equation, with Javi Ross getting 5th all by himself. He'll be thrilled with that effort. And then the best of the redline cars, Eduardo Leo won the opening round of the season, 6th for him here tonight, with Diego Pinto and Sam Coitert slotting in behind. Michele Costantini, 2-time pole sitter of the iRacing Indy 500, will be slightly disappointed down in 9th, but at least he finishes this race without any damage, and in front of Jaden Munoz to complete the top 10 in that Williams Esports entry. Dan Amor, 11th for him as he stays out of trouble on the ovals this time around. Brendan Lichtenberg, remember, from 31st to 12th. What a charge from the 10-time competitor in the iRacing Indy 500 broadcast splits, with David Toth, Jacob Oster, and then Gustavo Ariel, the rest of the top 15. Cooper Webster, Super Cooper, not so super today, unfortunately, down in 16th with Jason Brophy and Adam Crane. The rest on the lead lap. Josh Chin holds on to stay 1 lap down. Tamas Shimon being tangled up in one of the many incidents here today, alongside of the likes of Sotomuto, Ricardo Rico, Jeff Drake, Florian Labigra. Brandon Traino is a big name to see down there in the list of those taken out in one of our 4 cautions so far, or rather across the day. Peter Berryman, Michael Johnny, Luke McEwen. Tough for Apex, all things considered. Yusi Katia, Luis Nunez, and Jordan Caruso, the 31 drivers, up top to bottom in the race results. But let's throw it over to Kenneth, standing by with our race winner, Rob Malechka.
This is the 3rd time we talked to Robert Malechka in the last 4 months, give or take, after winning the Indy 500 on the fixed and open setup side of things. You get it here in this INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series. Robert, I know it was a little anticlimactic at the end, but how meaningful is a win like this at this time of the season?
Not only for me, but the team in general. You know, our bread and butter is the ovals, and for me to get the win, that should move me up a few spots in the points, and for Phil to get P4, that's massive for him to close the gap to the leaders up ahead in points. So no, the team did a great job this weekend, or last week or so, on the setup. We made some small but really crucial changes that ultimately got us the pace to not only qualify up front, but to get the win.
Well, I'd say being undefeated on the ovals this season is a good sign if you're on that private label Team Hype squad. I gotta ask you this because we're at Indianapolis. I know it wasn't an exciting finish, but for you, what's your celebration method? What kind of milk are you drinking after this race?
Honestly, pretty low key. Just probably some whole milk, whatever we have. Yeah, that's that's the fixed 500 for me this year. That's the Open 500 as well, and this, which is probably the third biggest race for us. So yeah, had some pretty good luck and some good speed at Indy, and hopefully to carry that over to the other ovals this coming season.
Might be telling the rest of the field, watch the throne. Robert Malechka, the winner here from Indianapolis. Congratulations on the W, Robert. We'll see you at Mid-Ohio next Thursday. So that is Robert Malechka, the winner here from Indianapolis. But behind him is Team Coanda's Michael Romanidis, who joins us now. Michael, this is, if not, as I see it, your best finish of the season so far. What did you see, though, out of that front windshield, if you will, in those final laps, knowing that it was, it ended under caution, but still?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's by far the best result. I think it's the first top 10 altogether of the season for me. Yeah, we basically nailed the strategy, and a couple of incidents ahead in the top 5 put us in a decent spot. And then basically we're at the perfect spot at every restart, every lap on the second kind of stint. And yeah, that elevated me up to second. And then obviously Robert has quite a bit of experience. He hasn't left any wins at this oval track this year for us, so it was always going to be difficult to pass him, but we tried our best, and then in the end we hoped we would have another shot at it with a green flag, but by the time we went to the first corner it was yellow again. But yeah, it was a nice little fight. Really good to be at the top with this point system, especially. Really big results are really good for the championship, so yeah, thanks to the team. Obviously we have some big oval guys here, so the setup was pretty much on point for the race. Again, some work to do in qualifying, can't really seem to be able to hack that, but yeah, pretty much nailed the race.
And with this finish, gets you a little closer to the top 10 in standings at halfway through the campaign. What do you and the team try to focus on for Mid-Ohio next Thursday?
Yeah, really more to the same as Barber, back to a road course. I believe it's the penultimate one, so we're going to full send it. It's going to be difficult again. I feel like oval is almost more competitive now than road on this series, but oval is always quite hectic. Road is a little bit less so. Obviously no cautions there, but yeah, we'll try our best. I think last time out in Barber we made some decent improvements with our road setup, so we'll try to do another big improvement there and bring out everyone at the top. But yeah, obviously missing one race at the end of the championship, so good to get some points. But yeah, I think for me maybe a P12, top 12, something there would be pretty decent. But yeah, doubt we will be able to fight, or I'll be able to fight for the same spot in a road course. But good race anyway.
Well, it's a step in the right direction, Michael. Congratulations on the podium here from Indianapolis. We'll see you in the rest of the field at Mid-Ohio next week.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Michael Romanidis for Team Coanda comes in from second place, and third place, Elliot Veyron, who joins us now. Elliot, just like with Michael, this is your best finish of the season thus far, but it came in chaotic ways with the strategy. What was that like from your end as things went down to the wire?
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks. Yeah, it was a tricky race. Quali not that good, but managed to gain some spots. And yeah, great strategy. And yeah, it was really tough at the end with the last yellow. I think I was not in a good position in P2. So yeah, I got overtaken by Michael, obviously. But yeah, still really happy with the result. Yeah, just on my first year of World Championship, to finish on a podium position, it's just insane. And I'd like to thank everyone at Coanda for all the work this week, because, yeah, it was great.
It's awesome when the hard work pays off and you get to celebrate a really great finish here, especially at a track like this. But you guys got only 2 road courses left in the season. Lots of other ovals left on the campaign. What do you try and prioritize here for points and to get yourself a spot with cash prizes on the line as well?
Yeah, I think ovals are as important as road course, to be honest. So we just put the same prep, if not even more prep, in ovals, because we have a bit less knowledge, but we'll be there for the rounds, and hopefully we can get some other podium finishes.
Well, Elliot, congratulations on the top 3 finish. Hopefully we see this trend continue to go upwards through the season, and we'll see you at Mid-Ohio next week. Arjuna, that's your top 3 here from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And well, what does that mean in terms of points? 12 between Cooper Webster and Diogo Pinto, as that 44's great result here today in 7th position really established himself a little bit closer, as we are now officially halfway through this INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series with 5 races done, 5 to go. Interesting to hear the opinion of the Coanda Esports drivers about the balance between oval and road, right? Because the first half of the season we've had 3 road courses, 2 ovals. Back half of the season that's upcoming, we've got 2 ovals, 2 road courses and 3 ovals still yet to come. And Rob Malechka finds himself jumping up now to 7th. Kenneth, he's in a very, very strong position.
Him and Phil Krause, who both finished in the top 5 tonight, are in a prime position to spoil the red line party at the top of this championship. The points will continue to grow as we get further into the season, but with more ovals than not, it probably gives that door wide open to those guys who want to make their name known. It was a wonderful one here from Indianapolis, but we go right back to the road courses. Mid-Ohio, much like Barber, a technical road course with tons of elevation change. That may give us another big swing, and who will be the favorite coming out of that one?
It's not a far distance to travel by any means, going on around 250 miles between IMS and the Mid-Ohio Sports Car course, but this elevation change, much like we talked about at Barber, but it's a very unique road course, and I can't wait for what's in store for us. Same time, same place on the INDYCAR YouTube channel and live on the iRacing Esports Network. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you in 7 days' time. But it's time for us to say goodbye to the Speedway for the final time this season. It's been great to head to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, not once but twice, but it's Rob Malechka leaving on top once again. Half the season's gone, half the season still left to play as we look to crown our very first INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series champion. For the team behind the scenes, for Kenneth Bueno alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thanks for your company. We'll see you next week from Mid-Ohio.
Dirt Racing 24 is available now.